Year was 1912. The world was changing fast. New machines were being built. Cities were growing taller. People believed the future would be bright. And in that time, a giant ship was created. A ship so large that people said it could never sink. The name of that ship was Titanic. More than 2,000 passengers gathered at the port. Some came with heavy luggage. Some came with small bags. Some came with servants. Some came with children. But all of them carried one thing: hope. For many passengers, this journey meant a new life in America. They dreamed about freedom. They dreamed about success. They dreamed about happiness. Nobody imagined that this journey would become history. The largest ship ever built. Titanic was like a floating city. It had restaurants, libraries, music halls, luxury rooms, swimming baths, even electric lights everywhere. Rich passengers lived like kings. Poor passengers lived in small cabins. But everyone felt proud to be on Titanic, because Titanic was special. Newspapers called it the greatest ship ever built. People believed it was unsinkable. Engineers said it was too strong to fail. Steel walls divided the ship into many sections. Even if water entered one section, the ship would survive. That is what people believed. But sometimes, human confidence becomes dangerous. Daniel Carter, among the passengers, was a young man named Daniel Carter. Daniel stood quietly near the railing, watching the ocean, feeling the cold wind. He was not rich. He was not famous. Just a simple young man, 21 years old. But inside his heart lived a big dream. Daniel wanted to become an engineer. He loved machines. He loved engines. He loved building things. His father had been a factory worker. His mother had died when he was young. Life had never been easy. But Daniel never gave up. He saved money for years, working long hours, skipping meals, walking instead of riding, until finally, he bought a ticket to America. Titanic was his chance, his future, his hope. Inside his pocket was a letter from his younger sister. It said, "Come back successful." Daniel read that letter every night. First days on the ship. The first days were peaceful. The ocean was calm. The sky was clear. Passengers walked on the decks. Children played games. Musicians played songs. People laughed. Everywhere there was joy. Daniel spent most of his time exploring the ship. He visited the engine room. He watched the giant machines move. Huge pistons rose and fell. Steam filled the air. Workers shouted commands. Daniel felt amazed. One day he told an engineer, "One day I want to build machines like this." The engineer smiled. "If you work hard, America will give you a chance." Those words filled Daniel with hope, the feeling of something wrong. But on the fourth day, Daniel began to feel something strange. He could not explain it. Nothing looked wrong. Everything seemed normal. But deep inside, he felt uneasy. At night, he walked alone on the deck. The ocean looked endless. Dark water stretched to the horizon. Stars shined above. But the silence felt heavy. Too heavy. Like the ocean was hiding something. Daniel stood still, listening. Only the sound of the engines. Slow and powerful. Then suddenly, the engine stopped for a moment. Just a few seconds. Then they started again. Nobody else noticed. But Daniel did. And that moment stayed in his mind. Because sometimes, small moments change history. Titanic-inspired long story, Part 2. In the first days of the journey, Titanic felt like a floating dream. Passengers woke up every morning to the sound of the ocean. Soft sunlight entered through the windows. Stewards walked through the hallways carrying breakfast trays. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. Everything felt peaceful. Everything felt safe. But beneath the beauty of the ship, hidden stories were slowly unfolding. Stories that nobody talked about. Stories that would change lives forever. A ship full of different worlds. Titanic was not just one world. It was many worlds together. First-class passengers lived in luxury. They wore elegant clothes. They attended grand dinners. They danced in beautiful halls. Crystal chandeliers shined above them. Soft music filled the rooms. Servants attended to their needs. Everything looked perfect. Meanwhile, far below the decks, third-class passengers lived very differently. Small cabins, Simple beds, narrow hallways. But even there, people smiled. Families gathered together. Children laughed. Young men talked about America. Young women dreamed about new lives. Hope existed everywhere. Because America meant opportunity, and Titanic was the road to that opportunity. Daniel's new routine. Daniel quickly created a routine. Every morning he woke up early. He walked to the deck. He watched the sunrise. Golden light spread across the ocean. It reminded him of home. After breakfast, he explored the ship. Sometimes he visited the engine room. Sometimes he watched the workers. Sometimes he simply sat and wrote in his notebook. He wrote about everything: the ocean, the passengers, the sounds, the feelings. He wanted to remember this journey forever, because he believed this was the beginning of his real life. The girl in white. One afternoon, Daniel noticed a girl standing alone near the railing. She wore a simple white dress. The wind moved her hair gently. She stared at the ocean quietly. She did not look like the other rich passengers. No jewelry, no servants, no proud expression. Just calm eyes. Daniel walked past her, but something made him stop. He turned back. She was still staring at the ocean, like she was thinking about something far away. Daniel gathered courage. He walked toward her. "Hello," he said politely. She turned and smiled softly. "Hello." Her voice was gentle. Daniel felt nervous. "My name is Daniel." "I'm Eleanor," she replied. And in that moment, a new story began. Conversations that changed everything. At first, they talked about simple things: the weather, the ocean, the journey. But slowly, their conversations became deeper. Eleanor told Daniel she came from a wealthy family. Her parents were powerful people. They controlled businesses. They attended important meetings. They expected Eleanor to behave perfectly. But Eleanor felt trapped. She did not want that life. She wanted freedom. She wanted adventure. She wanted choices. Daniel listened carefully. Then he told his story about his simple life, about working long hours, about saving money, about his dreams. Eleanor listened with interest, because Daniel spoke with honesty, not pride, not arrogance, just truth. And that honesty touched her heart. A growing friendship. Soon they began meeting every day. Morning walks, afternoon talks, evening conversations. They explored the ship together. They laughed. They shared stories. They talked about America. Daniel described New York as he imagined it. Tall buildings, busy streets, bright lights. Eleanor listened with shining eyes. Sometimes she asked, "Do you think I could live there?" Daniel smiled. In America, anything is possible. Those words stayed in her heart. A man watching them, but not everyone was happy. One evening, Daniel noticed a man watching them. The man wore expensive clothes. He stood near the staircase. His eyes followed Eleanor. Cold eyes, unfriendly eyes. Daniel felt uncomfortable. "Who is that?" he asked quietly. Eleanor looked and became silent. "His name is Richard." Her voice sounded tense. "My parents want me to marry him." Daniel felt a strange feeling in his chest. "Do you want that?" Eleanor shook her head. "No." For the first time, Daniel understood. Their friendship was not simple. There were obstacles. There were dangers. And there were choices to be made. Strange sounds at night. That night, Daniel could not sleep. The ship felt different. The air felt colder. The silence felt heavier. Then he heard something strange. Metal sounds. Distant footsteps. Voices. Very quiet voices. Coming from the hallway. Daniel opened his door slowly. The hallway was dark. Only a few lights burned. 2 crew members walked quickly past him. They looked serious. Too serious. Like something was wrong. Daniel asked, "Is everything okay?" One of them answered quickly, "Go back to your room." No explanation. No smile. Just cold words. Daniel returned to his cabin. But he could not sleep. Because deep inside, he felt something was changing. Something invisible. Something dangerous. The old man again. The next evening, Daniel saw the old man again, the same man who had spoken about dreams. He stood near the railing, looking at the ocean. Daniel walked toward him. "You said you saw ice in your dreams." The old man nodded slowly. "Yes." Daniel asked, "Do you still believe something will happen?" The old man looked at the horizon. "The ocean speaks." Daniel felt confused. "I don't understand." The old man said quietly, "This ship is moving too fast." Then he turned and walked away again, leaving Daniel alone, with questions and fear. Eleanor's secret. The next day, Eleanor looked worried. Daniel noticed immediately. "What happened?" he asked. She hesitated. Then she said quietly, "My parents want me to stay away from you." Daniel felt silence inside him. "Why?" "Because they think you are not important." Daniel looked down. Simple words, but painful. Eleanor continued, "But I don't care." She looked at him with determination. "I will make my own choices." Daniel felt something warm inside his heart. Hope. But hope can be dangerous. Because sometimes, hope comes before disaster. Would you like me to continue with step 3? Part 3. The journey had lasted several days. Passengers had begun to relax. Many believed the hardest part of the trip was already behind them. America was getting closer. Dreams felt closer. Hope felt stronger. But sometimes, the most dangerous moment comes when people feel the safest. And on the night of April 14th, everything began to change. A strange cold night. That evening, the temperature dropped suddenly. The wind became sharper. The air felt colder than before. Passengers wrapped themselves in coats. Even the crew members spoke about the cold. Daniel stood on the deck looking at the ocean. Something felt different. The water looked darker. The air felt heavier. Even the stars looked sharper in the sky. It was beautiful, but also frightening. Eleanor joined him. "You look worried," she said. Daniel nodded slowly. "I don't know why, but something feels wrong tonight." Eleanor tried to smile. "It is just the cold weather." But Daniel was not sure. Sometimes, the heart understands danger before the mind does. The warning messages. Inside the wireless room, operators received messages from other ships. Short messages. Urgent messages. Ice reported ahead. Large ice field. Dangerous waters. Again and again the warnings arrived. But Titanic continued moving fast. Very fast. Because Titanic was powerful. Because Titanic was strong. Because Titanic was believed to be unsinkable. And sometimes, confidence becomes blindness. The lookouts, high above the ship. 2 lookouts stood in the cold wind. Their eyes searched the dark ocean. No moon. No waves. The sea was calm like glass. Beautiful. Silent. Dangerous. Because calm water makes ice harder to see. Hours passed slowly. The cold became painful. Their hands froze. Their eyes burned from staring into darkness. Then suddenly, one lookout froze. Something appeared ahead. A shape. A shadow. Growing larger. He grabbed the bell rope. Clang. 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 3 loud rings echoed through the night. Then he shouted, "Iceberg ahead!" The sudden movement. Inside the bridge, officers reacted immediately. Orders were shouted. "Turn! Reverse engines!" The giant ship began to move. Slowly. Too slowly. Titanic tried to turn. The engines roared. Metal trembled. Passengers felt a strange vibration. Daniel felt it in his cabin. A deep shaking. Not violent, but unnatural. He stood up quickly. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The moment of contact. Then it happened. A long scraping sound. Metal touching ice. Not an explosion. Not a crash. Just a terrible tearing sound. Like a giant knife cutting steel. Passengers paused. Some looked confused. Some laughed nervously. Because the sound did not seem serious. But deep below, water began entering the ship. Cold ocean water. silent and unstoppable. Confusion. Passengers stepped into the hallways. What happened? Was that an accident? Did we stop? Questions filled the air. Crew members walked quickly, trying to stay calm, trying to look confident, but their faces told the truth. Something was wrong. Daniel walked outside. Cold wind hit his face. He saw small pieces of ice on the deck, white and shining. People picked them up. Some laughed. Some joked. They did not understand. Danger often hides behind calm moments. Eleanor's fear. Daniel found Eleanor near the staircase. Her face looked pale. What happened? She asked. I think we hit ice. Her eyes widened. Is it serious? Daniel hesitated. I don't know. That answer frightened her more. Because uncertainty is worse than truth. The truth below. Deep inside the ship. Engineers inspected the damage. Water filled several compartments. Faster than expected. Too fast. They calculated. They measured. They checked again. Then they understood. The ship would not survive. Titanic, the unsinkable ship, was going to sink. Slowly, but surely, and above. Most passengers still did not know. Orders begin. Soon, orders were given. Prepare lifeboats. Wake passengers. Women and children first. Crew members moved quickly. Doors were knocked. Voices called out. Put on life jackets. Come to the deck. Passengers woke up confused. Half asleep. Not understanding. Some refused to leave warm beds. Some believed it was only a precaution, because nobody wanted to believe the truth. The old man's words. Daniel remembered the old man. I saw ice in my dreams. Now the words felt real. Too real. Daniel searched the deck. And finally, he saw him, standing quietly, looking at the ocean, like a man who already knew. Daniel walked toward him. You were right. The old man nodded slowly. The ocean always speaks. Daniel asked, will we survive? The old man looked at him, then said quietly, some will. Those words stayed in Daniel's mind. Some will. Not all. The first lifeboat. Crew members began lowering lifeboats. Wooden boats hanging above dark water. Passengers climbed in slowly. Some crying. Some silent. Some refusing to leave loved ones. The ocean waited below. Cold and endless. The first boat touched water. For the first time, fear became real. Because now people understood. This was not practice. This was survival. A difficult choice. Daniel and Eleanor stood together. A crew member shouted, women first! Eleanor looked at Daniel. I don't want to leave you. Daniel forced a smile. You must. She shook her head. No. Daniel held her hands. You have to live. Tears filled her eyes. Moments like these define people. Because true courage is not loud. It is quiet. And painful. The ship tilts. Slowly. Very slowly. Titanic began to tilt. Not enough to panic, but enough to feel. Passengers noticed. Fear spread. Voices grew louder. People hurried. Crew members shouted orders. Time was running out, and the ocean kept rising. The ocean looked endless and black. Above the ship, the stars still shined peacefully. But below those stars, fear was spreading. Slowly at first, then faster. Because now people understood the truth. The ship was dying, and time was running out. Panic begins. At first, passengers tried to stay calm. Crew members repeated the same words again and again. Stay calm. There is enough time. Everything is under control. But people could see the truth. The ship was leaning more. The deck no longer felt level. Walking became harder. The air felt colder. Voices became louder. Some people prayed. Some cried. Some argued. Some stood silent in shock. Fear changes people in different ways. Lifeboats leaving, one by one. The lifeboats left the ship. Each boat carried people away from the lights, away from the music, away from the giant ship, into the dark ocean. Passengers inside the boats looked back. Titanic looked enormous in the darkness, bright lights shining, smoke rising into the sky. It looked impossible that something so big could disappear. But slowly, the front of the ship sank lower, and the truth became impossible to ignore. Eleanor's decision. Eleanor stood near a lifeboat. Crew members called for women to board. Quickly! There is no time. A sailor held her arm. Miss, you must get in. She looked back. Daniel stood behind the crowd, watching her, waiting. Their eyes met. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The noise, the shouting, the cold, the fear. Only one question remained. Stay or leave. Tears filled Eleanor's eyes. I can't leave you. Daniel stepped closer. You must. I won't survive without you. Daniel shook his head gently. You will. His voice was calm, but inside, his heart was breaking. You have a future, he said. You have dreams, she whispered. So do you. Daniel smiled softly. My dream was to reach America. He paused. Your dream is to live. The last words. Crew members shouted again. No more waiting. Daniel helped her into the boat. Her hands trembled. She held his hand tightly, like she never wanted to let go. I will find you, she said. Daniel nodded. Yes, even though he did not know if it was true. Sometimes hope is the only gift we can give. The rope released. The lifeboat began to move down. Slowly. Very slowly. Eleanor looked up. Daniel became smaller, farther away. But she never stopped looking. Because sometimes, the last image becomes the strongest memory. The rising water. Back on the ship, the situation became worse. The front of the ship sank deeper. Water covered the lower decks. Cold water rushed through hallways. Doors slammed shut. Furniture floated. The sound of rushing water echoed inside the ship. People ran upstairs, trying to escape, trying to survive. But there was less and less space, and more ocean. Courage and fear. Daniel helped other passengers. An old woman struggled to walk. He supported her. A child cried for his mother. Daniel helped them find each other. A man slipped on the tilted deck. Daniel pulled him up. In moments of disaster, some people think only about themselves, but others show their true hearts. Daniel did not know why he helped. He simply did what felt right, because sometimes kindness is stronger than fear. The musicians, near the center of the ship, the musicians still played. Soft music filled the cold air. Their hands trembled, but they continued. Passengers listened quietly. Some cried. Some closed their eyes. The music brought peace, even in the middle of disaster, because music reminds people of life. And life is precious. The old man's peace. Daniel saw the old man again. He sat calmly on a chair, watching the ocean. No fear, no panic, just silence. Daniel walked toward him. Aren't you afraid? The old man smiled gently. Everyone leaves this world one day. Daniel did not know what to say. The old man continued. The important thing is how we live. Then he looked at Daniel. You have lived well tonight. Daniel felt something change inside him. Not fear, not sadness. Something else. Acceptance. The final moments approach. Time passed quickly now. The ship leaned more. Walking became almost impossible. People held onto railings. Some slipped. Some fell. The cold wind cut through clothes. Breath turned into white mist. The ocean climbed higher, step by step, closer and closer. Lights flickered. Once, twice, then returned. Passengers looked up, silently praying the lights would stay, because darkness meant the end. Eleanor in the lifeboat, far away from the ship. Eleanor sat in the lifeboat, wrapped in a blanket, shivering, but she did not feel the cold. Her eyes stayed fixed on the ship. The distance grew larger, but Titanic still looked bright, like a floating city of light. Other passengers spoke quietly. Some prayed. Some cried. But Eleanor heard nothing, because her thoughts stayed with Daniel. She whispered softly, "Please survive." Again and again, like a prayer. The lights go out. Back on the ship. Daniel stood near the railing. The angle of the deck felt steep now. The ocean looked close. Too close. Then suddenly, the lights went out. Darkness covered everything. Gasps filled the air. Only the stars remained. Tiny lights in the sky. And the cold ocean below. For a moment, everything became silent. Then came the sound. The terrible sound, metal breaking. Deep and loud. Like the ship itself was crying. Because the end had come. Would you like me? The sound of breaking metal echoed across the ocean. It was deep and powerful, like thunder under the water. The great ship that people believed was impossible to sink was reaching its final moments. The cold night air felt sharper than ever. The stars above looked distant and silent, and the ocean below waited patiently, because the ocean always wins. The final struggle. Daniel held tightly to the railing. The ship leaned higher and higher. Standing became almost impossible. People slid down the deck. Some held onto ropes. Some held onto each other. Some simply closed their eyes. The cold wind roared through the darkness. Daniel's hands were numb. His fingers could barely move. But he kept holding on, because the will to live is strong. Stronger than fear. Stronger than pain. Stronger than the cold. The last look. For a moment, Daniel looked up at the sky. Thousands of stars filled the darkness. He remembered his childhood nights, standing outside his small home, looking at the same stars, dreaming about the future, dreaming about America, dreaming about becoming someone important. Life had been difficult, but he never stopped dreaming. And now, at the edge of the ocean, those dreams felt very far away. Yet something inside him still refused to give up, because hope is the last thing to disappear. The ship breaks, then it happened. The ship lifted higher, higher than before, almost standing in the water. People shouted. Some prayed loudly. Some called the names of loved ones. Then came a loud cracking sound, stronger than before. The ship began to break apart, slowly, terribly, like a giant tree splitting in a storm. Daniel felt the movement beneath his feet. He knew the moment had come. There was no more time, no more waiting. Only one choice remained: jump, or sink with the ship. Into the ocean. Daniel took a deep breath. The cold air burned his lungs. He closed his eyes for 1 second, and then he let go. The fall felt endless. The dark ocean rushed toward him. Then the water closed around him. The cold hit instantly, like thousands of needles. His body froze with shock. He could not breathe. He could not think. For a moment, he thought it was the end. But instinct pushed him upward. His arms moved slowly, heavy and painful. Finally, he reached the surface, gasping for air. The cold night air felt like fire. Fighting the cold, the ocean was full of people. Voices cried out in the darkness. Some shouted for help. Some called names. Some voices slowly disappeared. Daniel tried to swim, but his body felt heavy. The cold stole his strength. Every movement became harder. His hands stopped feeling anything. His legs moved slowly, too slowly. He knew he needed something to hold, something to keep him above water, something to survive. A small chance. In the darkness, he saw a piece of wood floating nearby, broken from the ship. He forced his arms forward. Slow movements, painful movements. Finally, his hands touched the wood. He pulled himself closer, resting his chest against it. It was not large, but it was enough to keep him above water, enough to keep hope alive. Waiting in darkness, time passed slowly, very slowly. The ocean felt endless. The cold never stopped. Daniel's thoughts became unclear. Memories came and went. His sister's letter, his home, the ship, and Eleanor. Her face stayed in his mind. Her eyes, her voice, her promise. I will find you. That promise gave him strength, even as the cold tried to take it away. The rescue, after what felt like forever, a sound appeared. Soft at first, then clearer. Voices. and the sound of oars in water. A lifeboat returned, searching for survivors. A lantern light moved across the darkness. Daniel tried to speak, but his voice was weak, almost gone. He lifted one hand slowly. The movement felt impossible, but he kept trying, because survival sometimes depends on one small moment, one small signal, one small chance. Then a voice shouted, "There!" The boat moved closer. Hands reached down. Strong hands. They pulled him upward, out of the freezing water, into the boat. Daniel collapsed, too weak to speak, too tired to move, but alive, still alive. Morning. Morning came slowly. Soft light spread across the ocean. The sky turned gray, then pale blue. The survivors sat quietly, wrapped in blankets, silent and exhausted. The ocean looked calm again, like nothing had happened, like the night had been only a dream. But the empty space on the water told the truth. The ship was gone. Only water remained. And memories. Eleanor's hope. Eleanor sat quietly in another boat. Her eyes searched every direction, every boat, every face, looking for one person, Daniel. Hours passed, still no sign. Fear grew inside her, but she refused to believe he was gone, because hope is stronger than fear. She whispered again, "You promised." The big ship. Later that morning, a large rescue ship appeared on the horizon. Smoke rose into the sky. Slowly it came closer. The survivors watched silently. Some cried with relief. Some prayed. Some simply stared. Because rescue meant life, and life meant another chance. One by one, the lifeboats reached the rescue ship. Survivors climbed aboard. Weak and tired, but safe. The reunion. Eleanor stood among the survivors, watching each person come aboard, face after face, stranger after stranger. Then suddenly, she froze. A man stepped forward, wrapped in blankets, moving slowly, but alive. Daniel. For a moment she could not move. Then she ran toward him. "Daniel." He looked up, weak but smiling. "You found me." Tears filled her eyes. "I told you I would." Sometimes, miracles happen quietly, not with noise, not with glory. Just two people meeting again, after believing they never would. A new beginning. Weeks later, they arrived in America. A new land, a new future. Daniel stood looking at the city. Tall buildings, busy streets, everything he dreamed about. But he was not alone anymore. Eleanor stood beside him. Both had lost much, but both had survived, and survival creates strength. Daniel opened his old notebook and wrote one final sentence. That night took many lives, but it gave us a future. He closed the notebook and looked ahead, because the past cannot be changed, but the future is always waiting. That concludes Daniel and Eleanor's journey.